Hello, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to Turning a Moment into a Movement. I am your host, Jay Love, and I also represent the Justice for Gerard movement. And for those, if this is your first time joining us, Gerard is my son who just recently passed away. But however, he was wrongfully convicted of a crime that he did not do, had no knowledge of, and he served 2 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. And so, because of that journey with my son Gerard, um, I felt like it was my duty to educate our community about wrongful convictions, because when I was going through it, I had a hard time finding information, connecting with people in the beginning. But through that whole through the whole entire experience with Gerard and working with others who have loved ones um, that are wrongfully convicted, we created this platform. So, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for those who are watching on YouTube. Hello. On Twitter. Hello. On Spotify later. And those who are going to watch it later, welcome. So, today we have a very interesting story, a wrongful conviction story of Andre Lee Nelson. And so we're going to talk about him. We talked about him the last time we were here a little bit, but we're really going to dig into the story. So, but first, I want to introduce you guys to the panel that's here today. Greetings, Reverend Tia.
Well, greetings. Hello, everybody. I'm just so glad to be here this evening. And Jay, I'm so blessed to have you in my life, demonstrating peace and power and love in the midst of the storm, turning a moment into a movement, and talking about wrongful convictions. Hello, Nicole. I see Nicole has chimed in, and Pamela. We got some great followers out here. Thomas, yes, free me. And this is where we are. We're talking about freeing people, and you know what, Jay, really fit freeing our minds, freeing our families, having
Yes.
an understanding about what's happening so that we know what to do, really going after the answers and the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I'm Reverend Tia, and I'm coming from all the way from Ipsy tonight. And I'll stand on the platform for Michigan Coalition of Human Rights. And of course, we do have an event coming up on Sunday, and I'll drop the line to you later. But just wanted to let you know that as a behaviorist in the community, and as an activist in the community, and as a mother and grandmother, I am so willing to change the narrative on
Mm-hmm.
everything in order to take my life back and to set precedents for my grandchildren. And I hope others are like that out there also. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Reverend Tia. Uh, Attorney Hugo Mack.
J Love, how are you? Now see,
I'm good.
why y'all always laugh when you see me? That's what I can't understand. you know,
Attorney Mack, I'm going to mute myself and let you take over.
okay, okay. Look, Hugo J. Mack is my name. Proud to be here. Criminal defense attorney, former candidate for Washtenaw County prosecuting attorney. Proud to do so because we need people in positions that have a heart. You hear me? That have a heart for justice. That's what we need, okay? And I hope that my candidacy encourage other people. I know what it's like to come from a penitentiary experience. I know what it's like to pay a debt you don't owe. That's why I'm so dedicated to this cause. So I want to thank you, J Love. I want to thank you, Reverend Tia. I've got another platform here. If my transmission is bad, I'm going to switch to another platform. Okay, so if the trend, I'll switch to another platform, and I apologize. I've had people out here 5 times, and they tell me nothing is wrong. So I apologize. I don't know what that is. So in any event, God bless you. I love you, and I'm proud to be here with you.
I'm happy you're here too, Attorney Mack. I'm going to mute you now.
Okay.
So we have Attorney Mack, and we also have Attorney Payne in today with us. Hi, Attorney Payne. How are you?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm I'm well, and I too am happy and proud to be here among this esteemed group and panel. I am Dorfine Payne, and I too am an attorney. I've been an attorney in criminal law. Most of my focus, more recent years, has been juvenile law, but I've been an attorney for a long time. I too ran for prosecuting attorney in Kalamazoo County because I understand the importance of prosecutors who are believe in justice, not just us, but justice for all. It's offensive. It's dangerous for our community. It's a terrible problem in our community when prosecutors don't behave as they ought. And we need prosecutors who are progressive, who understand the issues in communities, who understand the importance of holding police officers accountable for everything they do, for standing before a judge and asking for and presenting appropriate evidence. We understand the importance of that. And so even defense attorneys, more than anything, understand the importance of righteous prosecutors. I'm just happy to be here today to discuss this very extremely important issue. And one more time to be in the company of these wonderful, committed individuals who are continually following God's purpose in their lives and making a contribution and trying to make a difference.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Payne. I'm so excited every time that you come to bring your perspective as well to us, to the table, and to the subject matter. So, Attorney Payne, you wasn't with us the last time, but a couple of weeks ago, this young lady sent me a message about her brother who had been wrongfully convicted, and he's been in the Michigan Department of Corrections for over 30 years for a crime he didn't do. She started explaining some of the things uniquely to his case to me, and immediately I was like, we need you to come on ASAP. You know, it was the weekend of the wrongful conviction rally. So I really I promised her that, we are really going to go through this case and talk about her brother. His name is Andre Lee Nelson, and I'm going to bring on his sister now, Yolanda Nelson. Hello, Yolanda.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Hi.
So, Yolanda, introduce yourself and tell us about who you are and about your brother.
Well, my name is Yolanda Nelson. My brother is Andre Lee Nelson, and he was convicted of a crime that he did not commit. And it's been 30 years as of this year. Mm. And I want his story to be heard and told, that he did not commit this. He was illiterate. The police made a confession up, and he told him to sign it. He signed it, and when he signed it, he thought he was coming home because that's what they told him. And then come to find out, that was a confession that he signed saying that he did it. But his whole entire case has nothing to do with him. It started off with Andre Nelson did a murder, and the rest of the case is all a bunch of crackheads.
Yes. So, when you say he's illiterate, you was telling me some details about him. Let's talk about Andre a little bit. you were telling me about his IQ, because I really want Revatia to talk about that because she's a behavior therapist. But just explain to us about his IQ and type of learning difficulties that he had.
Okay. Yeah, his IQ when he got locked up was 55, and he was 23 years old. He was always in a special. His whole entire, youth going to school, he was always in a special. And when he went to jail, he didn't even know how to spell his mom's name. He was 23 at the time.
Revatia. Revatia, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, what I was gonna say was that when you talk about an IQ of 55 or 50, now, and I want people to understand that if 70, if a child has an IQ of 70, they already know that that individual may have a difficult time in school, just with 70. And what was his IQ?
55.
55. So moderate mental retardation is between 35 to 40 and 50 to 55. So it goes, what I'm saying is between 35 and 55, they call it moderate retardation.
Mm-hmm.
And severe mental retardation is an IQ between 20 to 25 and sometimes even 35 to 40. And the reason why they have the differences, and sometimes you say, well, why do they overlap? And sometimes cognitively, a person may be able to grasp something more than another, even though they have a lower IQ. And sometimes developmentally, there's a lot of physical factors that may also be included in that assessment. So between, if you're talking 55, you're talking moderate retardation. And
So
so,
I'm sorry,
go
Revatia,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to say, so they did not even factor in the disability.
Mm-hmm.
No one factored in the disability. They did not look at the disability.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I had another civil rights activist, Bishop Bernadette Jefferson, said, don't forget to mention, that's a human rights issue.
Mm.
Because if you are incarcerated and you have a disability, you have a right to have that disability looked at and factored in. And they didn't do that.
So Yolanda, tell us, take us on that day that he was, the issue that happened, the situation, and then to his arrest.
Okay, on September the 14th, approximately, I want to say like 10 o'clock, 10:30 p.m. I had just left my grandmother's house and picking up my children. I used to go and play bingo, and I used to drop my kids off to my grandmother's house. So when I came back from bingo, I picked my kids up from bingo. I got them in the car, and I was heading home. So I got to the corner of my grandmother's street, which is Mendota and Buena Vista. A guy named Moody Blue, that's what they called him in the neighborhood. He walked up to me. He ran up to my car and was like, they called me Yo Yo. He was like, Yo Yo, Yo Yo, they said I killed Billy Booker. And I said, what? He said, yeah, they said I killed Billy Booker. I said, why would they say you killed Billy Booker? You know. So when he said that to me, I backed my car up, and I went back. I drove in reverse because we only 5 houses off the corner. And I went in the house, and I told my grandmother, and my mom and them was all in the house, and I told them. They said Moody just said that Billy Booker just got killed, and the police is around the corner. everywhere. So I got on the phone and I called my brother, Andre, and I called him. He was on the east side. And I was calling him and telling him, I was like, they said Billy Booker just got killed. Now, Billy Booker stayed across the street from us, down the street. We grew up together. We was very tight in the Mendota area. We was all tight in the neighborhood. They was much older than us. Billy Booker was much older than me because him and my sister used to go together. So, and that was that. I told my brother that, and I went on home, got in my car, packed my kids up, and went on home.
Hold on for 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is key. What year was this?
This was 1993, September the 14th, 1993.
Okay, now go ahead.
Yes. And so I went on home and, live my life normal, talk to my brother every day. I remind you, I was more like a mother to my brother. We was very close. We the same age for 5 days. I always looked after him because I knew he had a disability. And I never let nobody, run over him, take advantage of him or anything. So he'll tell you right now, I always been his mama and I always acted like his mama. Because I used to always tell him, like, because he used to try to hang with guys that's in the street, and I tell him all the time, you can't hang with them people because them people, they'll take advantage of you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not built for the streets,
Mm-hmm.
So I used to always keep him with me at all times. Every house I ever lived in or whatever, he always been with me. So like I said, that went on. After that, he was living with his girlfriend on the east side, and him and his girlfriend, they had a baby, and he used to be watching the baby while she go to work. So when she go to work, so this particular day, she was at work. He was babysitting that day, September the 14th, because I called him and talked to him on the phone. He didn't have no vehicle. He stayed on the east side, and it wasn't nothing. So anyway, him and his girlfriend end up getting into it, and him and his girlfriend end up splitting up with one another. So my brother ended up having to come back home. So he was at my grandmother's house on Mendota. So it was like around about October, the beginning, like October the 10th or something, or the 9th or somewhere up in there. He told me that he lost his ID, but he was at a friend of our house down the street on Mendota, and his ID came up missing. And I'm like, your ID? Because I made sure he always had his ID and everything. So next thing I know, October the 12th, me, my mom, and my grandmother, we was at bingo. We went to bingo. My sister was at the house. My sister and my brother and my children was at the house. They were babysitting for me. And I get a call from the bingo hall and said, Yolanda Nelson, you have an important phone call. So I got up and I went and took the phone call. It was my sister calling me, telling me that the police just came and picked up Andre. I'm like, the police picked up Andre for what? She said, they said they picked him up for Billy Booker's murder. I'm like, murder? How? Why would they pick him up for his murder? That boy got killed last month.
Okay. Your sound went out.
Oh, she's muted.
Unmute yourself, Yolanda. Okay, so watch Yolanda work with her technical difficulties. Reverend T, I saw that you were posting some things in the chat.
Yeah, I want people to really understand that we're talking about cognitive delay. And so now, and I want to preface the point that it doesn't mean the person can't learn, because we do have, in our community, we need to go ahead and talk about this, because it just means a slow to understand, slow to verbalize, difficulty in communication of your basics in reading, writing, and counting skills. So a person who, and there, I'm kind of jumping, because the other thing is that Moderate retardation is a developmental disability that starts when they're born.
Mhm.
And so the delay just doesn't happen later. It happens because of my light just went out. Because it happens due to you'll see symptoms in crawling. There'll be a delay in the development of that child. So it's not just something that happens all of a sudden. So the milestones when it comes to sitting, crawling, walking later than other children, problems learning to talk or trouble speaking clearly, memory problems, um, inability to understand consequences of actions. And see, I'm saying this because if a person doesn't bring up the entire scope of
Mhm.
that individual and allow them to see the person, to see Andre, who is he, then they probably keyed on, well, he doesn't understand his actions. Or did he? Did they even say that?
Mhm.
Did they even say that? Um, Inability to think logically. Very important, because if you're planning to kill somebody, you have to have some type of logic to get from point A to point B to point C to finish. Um, the child's behavior is inconsistent with their age, lack of curiosity, learning difficulties, which I've said, and inability to lead a fully independent life due to challenges in communication, taking care of themselves, or interacting with others. Now, it doesn't mean that the person always has these things. Um, Sometimes you run across people who have mental retardation and they show signs of aggression, dependency, withdrawal from social activities, attention seeking behavior, depression, lack of impulse control. And a lot of these things, self injury, stubbornness, low self esteem, low tolerance for frustration. Now, those items that I just listed, that comes because they can't communicate.
Mhm.
That comes the frustration will occur if they have trouble getting their point across. You have trouble saying what they're really feeling and able to put it into words.
Right.
What they did was inhumane,
Right.
Mhm.
and they need to pay for this.
Right. So Yolanda, go back to the story we're at. He is arrested.
Mhm. So he was arrested. It was October the 12th, 1993, which is a month later. And when my sister was there, my sister said the police knocked on the door and it was like, we're here for Andre Lee Tillman. My sister said, Andre Lee Tillman? Sorry, there's no Andre Lee Tillman here. My brother got up, was like, I'm Andre Lee Nelson. And he said, are you Andre Lee Nelson? You're under arrest. And that's what that happened. And they took him out of there in handcuffs. And my sister told me, so when my sister called me, I was like, well, they'll be letting him go because I ain't worried about him talking about Billy Booker murder. I'm not even worried about that. So the next day came, they still like that. So now I'm constantly calling. I'm calling every day. Me and my mother, we just constantly calling every day. Cannot get through with him. We let him know that he was illiterate. He's slow. He can't read. He can't write. We need to talk with him. Because now he's been down there over 24 hours by himself, and so now he really feel alone because I was the one that's there for him, and he listened to me. And by me not being there and him not being able to talk to me or hear from me, I knew it was something. So it was like 3 or 4 days later when I called down, and they was like, well, he has been charged with murder in the first degree. And I'm like, how? He said, well, he made a confession. I said, how could he make a confession when he cannot even read or write? She was like, I wrote it out to him and he understood. And I was like, I said, I can tell you, I don't want to call him and told him that this guy had passed. She was like, well, I was like, well, did he give you his alibi? I don't believe his alibi. And we told his statement up. They told his alibi up. So I'm like, you told his stuff up. I say, well, why you can't either? I say, well, y'all was gonna do that, and she checked off on the paper that saying that he signed the confession. It got on there. She checked it off that he was illiterate. She checked it off because she knew he was illiterate when it come down to write, to read. And he didn't know not one word on there. So if he did admit to a confession, how do we know? Is that what they wrote down? You understand what I'm saying? I said we asked why you didn't use a what they call that, a tape recorder or a video cam. She's like, oh, we just don't do that.
Mhm.
We don't do that. So that's what she said she did. So she went from a homicide detective to a psychologist and to see if he was lying or not. So she did all this. She played all these roles in one.
Who is the she?
Her
Who
name
is
is
the she? I'm sorry.
her name is Sergeant Kenny.
And we're gonna talk about her in a minute.
Kenny, and it's Tillman on the end, but that's another story too. But okay.
Right. We're gonna talk about her in a minute. Attorney Payne. What are you thinking?
Oh, uh, well, I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
You know, I'm wondering. You know, I haven't seen the case, so but number one, I don't know about. I'm sure that Attorney Mack would agree that if I have a client with a 55 IQ, I'm going to immediately have a forensic interview and a psychological evaluation and a determination as to whether or not he had the intellectual capacity to understand what he was signing, to understand what was going on at the time. So I'm wondering if that occurred. If the police came for someone named Andre Lee Tillman and said they had an arrest warrant for an Andre Lee Tillman, I'm wondering why Andre Lee Nelson was arrested and what that arrest warrant said. I mean, there's just I have a lot of more questions than answers. I don't know about how retardation figures into this, but I do know that I've never had a client with an IQ of 55 that wasn't examined. And I would have a legitimate argument about his intellectual capacity. So that was the first thing that came to mind. The fact that he signed a confession, let me see, this was 30 years ago. The fact that he wouldn't even understand his rights. Did he have the intellectual capacity to understand his rights, even if they read them to him?
Right.
And if that wasn't videoed or if there wasn't any audio, it doesn't sound as if any of the protocol were followed or any of his rights that he was any of his rights were respected at the time. So it sounds shaky, but I've never seen the file, so I don't have any answers to those questions. But it's disturbing. It's extremely disturbing.
His case started off as Andre Lee Nelson murdered this guy, and the rest of his whole case has nothing to do with him. It's saying it's a confession, and it's just I got put out the courtroom because I was just so overwhelmed. I mean, it was just terrible. It was just terrible. And like I said, at that time, it was just me. My whole entire family was on crack. That's when crack hit the neighborhood and they tore our community up. And I only had nobody but me and my little brother, and that was it.
So I was looking at, in 1993 during that era. 1994 is when Clinton signed the crime bill. 1993 in Detroit, they were having a lot of crime and they were supposed to be doing reforms and it was just a lot of stuff going on. And I think it was I'm trying to remember his name, that was the police chief at the time who was indicted for embezzlement. I can't think of his name at the time,
Was
but
it Hart? Was it
yeah,
Hart?
Chief Hart. Yes, it was Hart. And then the next chief who was there, I think he was short lived, but he tried reforms. But it was a lot of stuff going on at that time in Detroit, and it was a lot of brutality and corruption. This was all around too, I think, around the Malice Green era, all in that time. So it was a lot of stuff going on in the city. And then the crack era was just devastating in the community at that time. And so what you're saying, that you also mentioned that this murder took place where they were smoking crack, or
Yeah, it was a crack house. And me and my brother, we never smoked crack. We didn't even, be around that. Everybody that was in the house was crackheads. So
right,
that's your murder there,
right. Attorney Matt, do you want to say anything before we go any further?
Yes. First of all, can you hear me without muting yourself, J Love?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
I can.
Okay. I have to ask that because it's so embarrassing. Okay, it's so embarrassing. So, it was about maybe, what is it, maybe 7, 8 years ago when the Supreme Court said that juveniles, people like 18 years of age convicted of murder, you cannot give them mandatory life imprisonment without having the judge review them because they mentally are not developed to the full extent of an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious if anybody in Miss Nelson's case has ever approached it from that way, because it seems to me, even though a person may chronologically be, Miss Nelson, how old was your brother when this happened?
He was 23.
Okay, see what I'm saying? So even though, and counsel can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but just because a person is chronologically a particular age, it doesn't mean they're mentally developed to that particular age. So it seems to me a person with dealing with a mild retardation, I don't know how that person is any less worthy of a review of their mental state because of their condition, as opposed to a 17-year-old that gets convicted of first-degree murder. Mm-hmm. Has that ever been approached, Ms. Nelson?
No. They gave him life, never chance of parole. He's supposed to die there.
Well, I'm telling you, counsel, I'd appreciate Counsel Payne. I appreciate your input on this. Doesn't that make a plausible argument, though, that he should at least have his life sentence reviewed in light of his mental retardation at the time that this crime was committed, allegedly?
Yeah, not only that, but that the science, the current science indicates that it's not, brain development is questionable up to age 24. So okay. He immediately should be eligible for a review. Just based upon the current science. In fact, I thought that there was a recent case where a young man was released based upon some of that current science. And he was above 18 when he was convicted, but he got an LWOP, and I'm sure that he was older than 18, but it was based upon, brain development. So but even that should have happened. That should have been happening right now. Even with the conviction, he's still eligible for review. So is anyone working on an appeal for him, or a review for him currently?
No, no. Mm-mm.
Ms. Nelson, what county was this out of?
Wayne.
Mm.
Well, J Love and staff, Kim Worthy has been, I was looking up some statistics on this. Can you hear me? A while back, Kim Worthy has been the most resistant prosecutor to allow people to, for example, after they have their hearing on their mental state, it doesn't mean that their sentence is reduced. It means it's review for possible reduction. So you can be a 17-year-old, having been convicted of first-degree murder, have a review and still do life in prison. Still, okay. So that's not a guarantee. All that is an opportunity. So,
well, can I say something?
Yes.
Excuse. Kim Worthy. He wrote Kim Worthy. I think it's like 4 years ago, and asked her, would she look at the case and stuff? She said no, she cannot look at the case because he signed a confession. And I got the letter too. I have that too. That she's sitting back and told him. So she didn't even look at it. She just said no because you signed a confession.
Wow. Yeah. So that pretty much would match the stats that I was about to talk to you about, and if he was mentally challenged, maturity wise and otherwise, it doesn't matter if he signed a confession or not. You see, it doesn't, because the same mental infirmity that would have affected his ability to defend himself would also affect his inability to stop and say, I'm not signing this. And you see, I'm sorry, but it's a criminal defense attorney in me. I got a bunch of questions. When he was there, did he even ask for an attorney? Did they even say you have a right to remain silent? I mean, anything ever done?
Well, I got the paperwork saying that they read that to him and they told him to initial everything after they said. He did initial it, but by him initialing it, he didn't understand none of that. So he didn't know nothing about attorney. So that's why he was there. And like I said, they holding him for so long and it kept putting it in his head to where she wrote it down that the stuff that he said that he went over there and robbed the man, and he robbed the man for $30 and just crazy stuff. It's just
okay. But what was the interview recorded?
No, nothing. That's what I'm saying. No recording. We asked that his court-appointed lawyer during with the trial. They asked him like, well, why wouldn't you, if you knew that and you marked off the box saying that he was illiterate, why wouldn't you use a tape recorder? Why wouldn't you use a video recording saying that? She said, because I just didn't want to. I just didn't, because I knew that he was lying. Everything is on paper. If y'all see his case, it's just, I've been waiting for this moment for somebody to hear. You just don't know, because it's all about money. I don't have no money. So that's why it's so hard. So when y'all got this wrongfully conviction thing, it helped a lot.
And that's why they did it.
Yes.
That's what I need people to understand. They did it because economically you were at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And that's why they did it. And that's why they continue to do it, because he's not the only one.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not the only one. He's one of many that they went into economically disadvantaged communities where there is disparity. And this is what I need people to understand, that in America, we have criminalized poverty. Mm-hmm. And we haven't tried to help. And at the helm of the leadership in offices that could possibly help to turn things around, they perpetuate it. Mm-hmm. And if we don't get the information and begin to take back our families and fight for what is right. Yes, she could have overturned it. That any one of those people could have overturned it. But you know what? Their ego is so big. They don't want to be wrong. They'd rather convict a lot of people than say I made a mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
And whoever that sergeant was, I'm praying.
So
Oh.
let's talk about her for a minute.
Yes.
Her name again, Yolanda.
Sergeant Ivy Kenny Dash Tillman.
Right. So is that a coincidence that she was looking for Andre Lee Tillman and Andre Lee Nelson with her last name? But we're gonna. This is her. This is the same. And I got this from a Google search that anybody could go and Google. But Joanne, that's her name, Joanne Kenny Tillman, is before this case. I think this happened in 1992. She was involved with eliciting a confession from a 12-year-old girl of a murder of a child that she was babysitting by promising that she could go home if she confessed to the crime. The confession was thrown out of juvenile court. That happened in 1992 that she was involved in. She let her, Joanne Kenny testified later in federal civil court lawsuit for the city of Detroit that the city of Detroit had a policy and a practice of detaining witnesses. Of course, that policy had been thoroughly exposed when the U.S. Department of Justice put the Detroit Police Department under a consent agreement, which with regards to the use of force and practices of witnessing roundup in 2003. She also was the police officer that was involved with Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick at the time when she said he assaulted her and another officer when she was trying to serve a subpoena, and she left the force and she became an investigator for the prosecutor's office. And then also she was involved in, this was when the city paid out 5-figure settlement in 1995 because she locked up a lady accused of a murder, a mother of two, as a witness. She was a witness. I'm sorry. She wasn't accused of a murder, but she was a witness. Illegally holding her and her 12-year-old until her 12-year-old and her 6-year-old son implicated her in a death. And so because of that, the judge was so outraged in court by this. The judge said, if I had ever seen a case where police had manufactured the facts, this is one. I have never had facts as egregious as this case. She was involved in that as well. So she has a history. If anyone want to Google her or Google this, I got this from the voiceofdetroit.net that talks about her. So where is she now?
Now she's at the Wayne County Integrity Unit. Yes, so that's why I have a case. The Integrity Unit have his case. Been having his case since May of 2020, and they still have not contacted him or tried to do anything, or try to look at his case or anything. So that's what we're trying to say. Me and my brother is thinking that she got a hold to his case and then put it to the side or threw it out. But I do have the paper saying that no news is good news, and no news is good news, and your case remained open. This is from the Integrity Unit right here. This is it. This is the letter right here that I got from him. And we still haven't. I still right now call now. So I called last week. Now you can't call no more. You can't call no more. They don't answer no questions. They said if you're calling about the case, we have to do it, in order. Then the order it was received. So just sit back and wait. So yes.
I agree with Pamela said. She does not have a clue of what integrity is.
Not at all.
So I just had to
Who's
put
over?
that.
Who's over the integrity unit? I'm sorry. Do you know who's
This Wayne
over that
County.
unit?
This is Wayne County Integrity Unit. Kim Worthy and Valerie Newman.
Valerie Newman.
It's in Kim Worthy's office.
This is not an integrity unit at all.
Right.
So,
Wow.
So have you, I just have a question. Do you have
ahead.
have you contacted, I'm assuming that you've spoken to ACLU, to a number of indigent defense attorneys that review cases, and have you done that?
No, everybody I didn't contact or my brother has to contact. Everybody want money, and I don't. Like I said, I don't have the money. It costs so much. I even had Scott Lewis. I asked him, could he please, because he charged a lot of money, and I asked him, can you just please? I'm like, and if anything, you find out something, and he get out and he get some money or something, or we can pay you later. Could you just please just look into it? And it was a no. So everybody want money, so
yeah, but there are organizations that look at cases and review them and file pro bono.
my brother said something about that pro bono. He had me to call somebody, and I called them, and I left they never answered the phone, but I didn't left a lot of messages on people's phones and stuff that people numbers that he gave me, and never got a return call back or nothing. It's just like when I start off telling the case, it's just like it's so much, it's like people don't even have the time to listen. Like I said, what y'all didn't heard is just the beginning, and just the beginning. I don't know how to explain it. That's just the beginning. It's just so much. And I'm just like, when Kim Worthy, when he wrote her, and that's what she told him. She didn't get to take the chance out to even look at it and read it, or none of that. So.
Well, they have. I'm thinking about National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers that take. They have a Return to Freedom project. There are a number of.
The Innocent program. You talking about the Innocent program?
No, I'm talking. No, it's a different program. It's like that though. But I can give you the information or get it to you of potential people that you could contact.
Okay. I'll look into it.
So I want to play this video. Go ahead, Attorney Matt.
Oh, well, no, I just had a question. Was this a trial?
Yes, it was a trial. It was a jury, and the jury, the police officer that was in there which is the guy Billy Booker, the guy that got killed, is his family was in there, and they was talking to the jury and everything, and I went back and told it, and then like they blew everything off and did what they did.
Well, okay, but I'm J Love. I don't want to delay the broadcast here, but I'm just curious though. So they had the confession. Your brother never testified?
Nope.
Okay, so your brother never testified.
Nobody testified.
Okay.
They only let my mom testify, and she testified that he was learning disability, and he'd been in a special all his life. They didn't have his
Okay.
baby mother, me. Nobody got a chance to testify on his behalf, not even him.
Well, okay, but who testifies and does not testify is a decision for the defense attorney and the defendant. So when you said that they didn't let them, it's not a matter of someone not letting them, it's a matter of somebody not calling them. So
Yeah, well, nobody called them. That didn't let us.
Okay, well, it seems to me then that was some kind of a trial strategy or whatever by the defense attorney not to bring his family in to talk about this guy from when he was born. I mean, he's been this way like ever since he was born.
Ever since he was born, yes.
Okay, yeah. So I'm curious as to why that never came in, and I'm curious as to who put him there. Somebody was shot. Is that what happened?
Yeah, the guy was shot and killed.
Okay, so somebody had to say they saw your brother there with a gun and killed this person, right?
Right. And can I say this? Now, can I say? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just curious how all that developed. Somebody, it had what, 2 or 3 people say your brother shot this guy. Is that what happened?
Yes, it's like 5 to 6 people in the house. And the one young lady that's in the house, her name is, I don't want to know if I should say her name on here or nothing, but anyway, she used to come to my house, my grandmother's in them house, because she used to get high with my parents and them and my family. She been knowing us over 20 years. She was in the house. She the one said when the thing first happened on September the 14th, they took her down and asked her, who was the guy. She described this guy. Somebody was 5'7", 200 some pounds, dark complexion, facial hair. That's not my brother. My brother was 6'1", big ears, light-skinned, soaking wet, 130 pounds. And she known us because my grandmama used to let her use her asthma machine because she had asthma and she was getting high. So the lady knew him. So that day when it happened, she described somebody totally different. So when my brother ended up breaking up with his girlfriend and come back back in the neighborhood, his ID ended up coming up missing. And then all of a sudden they brought him down for a lineup and they picked him out and say he did it. Because she know he's slow. So that was the best thing to do so they can get the heat off of them. So they had to blame it on somebody. So that's how that happened.
So you wonder why any of that didn't come out in a trial, that there was an early description of the assailant, and she later identified someone that looked the
opposite,
nothing like her description. I mean, did she testify?
Yeah, listen, I got everything. I got all the paperwork. She got a Q&A. It's terrible. Yeah, the other people in there that didn't testify, it was like, so his lawyer was like, well, the only reason you saying that Mr. Nelson did is because he's sitting here. She said yes. His case was just, you just wouldn't believe. Y'all just wouldn't believe how his case went. That's what I say. When I say it started off with Andre Nelson killed this individual, and then it turned out to be ain't had nothing else to do with him.
Did they ever do a forensic did he ever go to the forensic center? Was there a forensic center back in 1993? I don't know.
Yes, there was a forensic.
Yes.
There was forensic in 93.
Yep.
Yeah, because I used to
So,
get clients from forensics in 93.
Did he go to the forensic center, and was there a determination that I can't imagine him being able to assist with his defense.
He didn't, like I said, the murder took place September the 14th. He came back on October the 12th. That's when they picked him up, October the 12th, a whole month later. So it's like,
Yeah, but that's not what she's asking. That's not what she's asking. She's asking, what she's talking about is was there ever a competency hearing to see if this man was competent to stand trial, able to assist his attorney. No, there was no competency rule.
The attorney that he had, he knew that because he argued that he was slow. He was, mild retardation. He He argued that in court and everything, and it still went that way.
You can argue something, but you need. I mean, most courts of law require evidence, so the evidence would be
no fingerprints,
No, she's not talking about. Yolanda, she's not talking about that. She's talking about his compass. Was he able to mentally stand trial? Was there ever at any time did anyone say, "Hey, we need to check to see"?
No,
if
did
he's
anybody
competent?
get on the stand and say he's not competent to stand trial?
When my mom got on stand to tell him that he was mild retardation and how he was since birth, that's the only one.
Okay, that's amazing.
That was it.
Amazing. That is
and they even subpoena all his documents from him. All his documents from doing school. They subpoenaed that, and they had that too.
So I saw on a confession sheet that you sent me that it did say that the police did check that he was illiterate. So it seemed like they would have did that a part of the trial.
Well, not being able to read doesn't necessarily indicate that you don't understand or you don't have the capacity to understand what someone's saying to you.
Mm-hmm.
You need experts to come in and make that determination, and that be a factor about him even standing trial.
Right.
If he can't assist with his defense, he shouldn't have. I mean, I don't understand.
So this is 1993.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about 1933. There
Right.
was
Well, yeah.
There should have been a competency hearing. There should have been. And I wonder, certainly there was appeal. There was an appeal after he was convicted. Was there any question about ineffective assistance of counsel or? Okay.
That's why I think they was all working together. It was just just nothing. It's just.
Well, it seems like they had an agenda for them to have the ID comes up missing. There's a delay in the arrest. It seems like they were putting things. It appears that they were putting it together.
Yes.
And then looking at the time of dispensation, that during that whole time, people who had substance use disorder were criminalized, especially in the African American brown communities. People of color, always they came after those neighborhoods first. They come after the people who are economically disenfranchised. And so that is clearly what has happened. But today,
So
I don't think we've done enough to broadcast who this woman is, the people who are at the helm, and to publicly make statements that really show, which we are doing right now, show what has happened, what they are used to doing. And we have allowed these same people to be promoted within our neighborhoods as civic leaders at our own demise.
So Yolanda, have you or have you or your brother reached out to any innocent projects? Because those innocent projects, if you can get someone to, they have a few here in Michigan, they have others out of state as well. But, to see if they'll be interested in this case, because although it takes them a while to do it, you will have someone else looking at that from that perspective.
Well, we did have the innocent program, and they was working on it for maybe 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And the innocent program said that they was trying to contact all the witnesses and stuff, and they couldn't contact them because some people dead and some people not there, and they couldn't find them, and they couldn't do nothing for him. That's what they told them.
Okay.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I wanted to show this video. Let's see what time. Okay, we can show it. Just 1 second, you guys. I gotta navigate this.
What I want to talk about actually is what I think is one of the most counterintuitive aspects of human behavior, and that is the tendency for people to give confessions to crimes they did not commit. I have been investigating this topic for many years now, and I find that people actually intuitively have a better grasp on why somebody might kill themselves and commit suicide than understand why somebody might confess to a crime they did not commit. You would think, in terms of how common it is, that it almost never happens. When I first got involved in false confession, in the study of false confessions, it was my sense that I was studying a fascinating aspect of social influence, but not an aspect of social influence that was common. The more I see and the more data that have come out, the more we come to realize that people often confess to crimes they did not commit. We know, for example, that if you look at the Innocence Project DNA exoneration cases, if you just take that sample alone, that number now is up over 250. In roughly 25% of those cases, false confessions were a contributing factor. And I say that's surprising because legal scholars for years have assumed that confession is the gold standard of evidence, and that when you had a confession, you had some degree of certainty of conviction. Certainly, some people are more vulnerable to giving false confessions than others. And I say that for a couple of different reasons. First, it's important to recognize, I think, that very often false confessions occur voluntarily. That is, somebody who has not committed the crime steps forward without police pressure, without police influence, and confesses to something they didn't do. There's a long history of cases just like that. I years ago called these voluntary false confessions. But then when it comes down to looking at vulnerability in the police interrogation setting, it is absolutely clear from the wrongful conviction data, from laboratory experiments, from self-report studies, that juveniles are particularly vulnerable. They are disproportionately represented in the population of false confessors. That people with intellectual impairments, the mentally retarded, for example, are disproportionately represented in the population of false confessors. And people with various types of mental illness appear again in those numbers with large frequency. It is clear that whether because these populations are naive, whether they are suggestible, whether they are overly compliant, whatever that issue may be, it is clear that in the police interrogation setting where influence is the issue, they are more subject to influence and manipulation than the average person. It is common for people, and it would be wrong for people to assume that only the weak and vulnerable confess to crimes they didn't commit. It happens to people who are ordinary, smart, having all mental health and adults. The reason it happens is now it gets down to a story about police interrogation tactics. In the United States, police are allowed to lie about evidence. Police are allowed to turn to a suspect who has for hours denied any involvement and to say to that suspect, you've denied your involvement and yet we have your fingerprints on the murder weapon. Or we have the victim was in a struggle, we have hair in her grasp, we've done the test, the hair is yours. Or you've taken a polygraph test, a lie detector test, and you failed it. Or you've been identified by a witness, or we have your fingerprints, or your blood, or your DNA, or what have you. In these cases, we see a number of these cases where the suspect starts to get confused and disoriented and starts to question his or her own innocence. And often the conversation then turns to questions about memory and consciousness. And there are cases on record where suspects who we now know are innocent not only confessed and signed a confession, but they concluded and inferred that they must actually have committed this crime. There is a misassumption, a misconception in the criminal justice system that I'd know a false confession if I saw one. I've heard police say this, that if they took a false confession, they'd know it. I've heard prosecutors say it. I've heard judges say it. There is this common belief that if somebody were to give a false confession, somehow it would be discernible. It would look different. It would sound different than a true confession. Not so. My colleagues and I several years ago went into a prison outside of Boston to do the following study. We titled the study, I'd Know a False Confession If I Saw One. We had prisoners confess to the crimes they'd committed for which they were being incarcerated, and we taped their confessions. And then we had them on the spot make up a confession to something we knew they didn't do. We showed those tapes to people. We showed them to police detectives, experienced police detectives. We showed them to lay people. People couldn't really tell the difference between the true confessions and the false. And so it's not a wonder that judges and juries uncritically accept confessions whenever they hear them. It's virtually impossible to discern a false confession just by looking at it or just by listening to it. And that's why there are so many cases on record where there is, on the one hand, for a judge and jury to see a confession. There is, on the other hand, DNA that excludes the defendant who had confessed. Invariably, confession trumps DNA. It's that powerful. Lots of research has been done. There's lots more to do. At this point, my colleagues and I are interested in two sets of questions. One, I'm interested in using laboratory research methods and the laboratory paradigms that we've developed to try to create more diagnostic interrogation methods. I think interrogation is a process of influence that we could probably design in a laboratory. And we can design it by creating guilt and innocence in a laboratory, by interrogating people, and by looking to see which techniques that we have developed increase the confession rates among the guilty, but not among the innocent, which of course is everybody's surgical goal. And so one set of studies that we are in the process of conducting is to do just that, to try and use laboratory methods to develop better, more effective interrogation techniques. The second set of research questions that we've been asking has to do with the fact that once a confession is released into the air, everything changes. The judge and the jury see the other evidence around that confession differently. Interpretations change. All sorts of cognitive and behavioral confirmation biases kick in, so that once there's a confession, it almost doesn't matter that there's a lot of contradictory exculpatory evidence. There is the confession. In addition, and this I think is the most pernicious and most overlooked, and people don't realize this, and I only came to realize this 3 or 4 years ago through work I've done in actual cases. The confession has the power to corrupt other evidence. It has the power to change identifications made by eyewitnesses. It has the power to change the reports given by forensic experts. It has the power to eliminate alibis who conclude after hearing that the person they alibied had confessed, they conclude that maybe I was wrong about the time of the place. And so once there is a confession, that confession corrupts other evidence. And why that's so significant is when you go back and look at these false confession cases, guess what? You often find that the confession was not the only error in that case. There was a snitch, there was a forensic expert who made the wrong judgments about the testing that was conducted. Alibis have dropped out thinking they were mistaken. Eyewitnesses have changed their identification, this time identifying the confessor. And so we've actually started to do those kinds of studies. And that's significant. It's significant because when an appeals court goes back to review a confession case, what they see often is an apparent mountain of evidence. But it's a mountain of evidence that all stems from the confession itself. Essentially, it's not a mountain of evidence, it's a house of cards.
Wow. And so just listening to that and listening to your story, how you said the confession, it trumps everything else. It makes everything else seem like, so when you're talking about, Yolanda, about, this person described this, or this person said this. That confession just trumped all of that. And, once it, like you said, once it hits the air, nobody is looking um, at the real evidence anymore. Dion asked this question: how do you get a confession suppressed, Attorney Matt?
Well, the thing of it is this, is that you're all familiar with Miranda versus Arizona, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, Ernesto Miranda was no Boy Scout, okay? He was a thug and a criminal, self-professed, okay? But what the
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court said was, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you did not let this man know that you were going to use anything he said against him, okay? And so I want you to understand something. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but the next time somebody tells you about all the things police do for you, remember, 99% of those things are things they do because they've been ordered to do them, okay? There is no police union in the United States of America, okay? Not one of the 88,000 police stations in villages and townships that renders you Miranda warnings because they want to, okay? So what I'm saying is that in terms of this whole situation, a confession has got to be knowingly and voluntarily given, free of coercion, okay? We had the Central Park Five. I'm sure you remember that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you remember that, all right? So it's just amazing when I hear this story, and once again, I haven't seen the briefs or anything like that, but it's just amazing how nobody seemed to highlight effectively to try to keep that confession out in the first place. That's the first thing. If it was my case, the first thing I'd have done is I'd have been filing a motion to suppress that confession. If I had my way, the jury never would have heard that. Never. So, I don't know if the attorney tried to do that or whatever. I don't know. So, with the confession in, I think another flaw was, from hearing this young lady talk, this man was never evaluated for competency. Okay. Not only was he not evaluated for competency, he doesn't appear to me he was evaluated for insanity. Okay. Because, you can have alternate defenses. You can have alternate theories. All right. One theory is a competency. That means, is he fit and able to help his attorney right now at trial? Insanity deals with what was his mental state at the time. So if he had the mind of an 8 or 9 year old child, I question whether or not he could actually form the intent to legally kill somebody. So these are all things that I don't know, because I haven't seen the case. Certainly questions I would, as my colleague said, under the Michigan Constitution, everybody in a criminal case got a right to an appeal. That's why we have a court of appeals, all right? You don't have an automatic right to have the Supreme Court of Michigan look at your case. They've got to agree to look at it, but everybody's got a right to that intermediate court, the Court of Appeals. So, I would just be curious if there was ineffective assistance of counsel on not raising these issues on appeal, So it's a tragic story, J Love and Cass, but it's not one that's new to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we want to leave on a high note, Revertia. Where can we go with this?
I have to stand firm in knowing that things happen for a reason, and that we're shedding light on our understanding of what has transpired through the years. And I know, from the attorney's point of view, they've seen it. But a lot of times, people in the neighborhood, our community, they don't understand at what risk how things happen, how stories happen,
Mm-hmm.
how people are being prosecuted. And And so what this does is help to shed light on it. And so I want to thank you, Yolanda, that your love for your brother. I want to thank you for how you stood and how you got through that period, because that alone is victorious. Now
Yes.
it's up to us to figure it out. There's answers and solutions. That's what I'm going to stand on. And I believe that the time has come to an end for people to continue to act unjustly, inhumane, and not have "I'm inhumane" written on my forehead. I think everybody needs to know who stands for righteousness and who does not. And all that hopping, the gray line and all that, there is no gray line. Either you stand for justice or you don't. And so now, because of you and your steadfastness, we can take some steps with you. We can be there with you. And and we can secure our children, secure those who have disabilities and have a greater heart for people and for families. And we can take our community back, or take it as our own for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attorney
Thank you.
Payne, what would you like to leave us with?
Whenever you get picked up by the police,
Yes, ma'am.
say, call an attorney. That's all you have to say. Call an attorney. Don't say another word. I mean, if anybody learns anything from anything, if you don't understand that, I mean, we're lost. And trust me, I have given that advice at one after the other events. I mean, and somebody at that event will call me 6 months later and say, I got picked up. And I told the police that, I don't understand that. I don't get it. What does call an attorney? I mean, what does that mean to anybody? It means that they can't talk to you anymore. And you don't have to say anything. I don't care what they say. Just block it out. Just say, call an attorney. And I understand that they can be coercive. I understand that they can try to wear you down. But it doesn't matter once you say, call an attorney. Because whatever you say after that, whatever they coerce you to say, whatever they try to convince you to say, it doesn't matter. Because any decent attorney worth their salt will go into court and get that thrown out of court. So just please, just for your own self-interest, it doesn't matter whether you did it or not, just say call an attorney.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Payne. That is like great. We've been saying that for a long time now about the call an attorney, be silent. But we hear more and more stories where people have, talked to them thinking that they were their friends and think that they were listening to them and their side or going to be on their side about the story. So we just had to plant that into our community more. And that's why we have, we come on here on Friday to not only tell these stories, but to educate. So I thank you, Yolanda. Do you want to say anything else before we leave?
I just like to thank everyone for listening and finally getting his case out there, getting his name out there. And I thank every last one of you for taking the time out to listen.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we're going to keep, following behind you. And when we get some updates, and we're going to see what the integrity unit, because his case is with the integrity unit now. So we're going to see what we're going to follow behind that and see, what they're going to say and do. But so we're going to continue to, keep in touch with you about Andre Lee Nelson. We're going to say his name as much as possible, bring as much attention to him so we can, have some different results and see him home.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next week on Turning a Moment into a Movement.
Thank
God bless everyone.